All right, cool. I guess Kevin's not gonna be here. Alrighty. Well, that's a lot of fun. Bears Nation podcast. Without Kevin, Jake Hassan, as always. What? There you are. Hey, bud.
Got booted from the stream immediately. Don't want me? What's going on? I don't know.
It's all right. I was just getting into it, but Bears Nation podcast post draft. I'm sure everyone has a lot of feelings. I know Kevin has a lot of feelings. Um, we'll get into it. We'll break down the picks that were and break down Ryan Poles' process and what went down on draft night, draft weekend, because obviously the Bears did not have a first round pick and Ryan Poles did not trade back into the first round like some people surmised might happen, didn't happen. So we will get into everything, but just first want to say, Kevin, awesome. I texted you this awesome job on the draft coverage. I couldn't make it. Kevin held it down spectacularly, did an absolutely unbelievable job. I told you this. I'm really proud of you, man. You crushed it. So just well done. And now I'm back, and we're gonna go through what is sure to be a very even keeled and I'm sure calm episode.
Yeah, we missed you this weekend, but it was a lot of fun to do that the live draft episode. We've never done that before, so to get our live reactions as the Bears continually did not take Justin Ross was funny. I know Shane, who's in the chat right now, was there, and I know he probably could attest that it was a good time. We were, Weezer was performing. We were roasting Weezer throughout the whole thing. It was just because why? Like, why Weezer at the NFL draft? Like, I don't need Weezer.
Are you just not a Weezer guy?
Nah, I'm not a huge Weezer guy, but also like they were pausing the draft so they could show Weezer, and I was like, we don't need this. Let's get to the Bears next. It was just a lot of fun in the chat, and we did some breakdowns on YouTube. So you guys want to check out the breakdowns, you can see them there. But Jake's back, and I haven't talked to Jake about. We've texted a little bit, but I don't know where you're at with these picks. So I'm excited to break them down, discuss them, and give. I don't want to give grades because I think drafting draft grades are stupid and they make zero sense because they're so subjective based off of like how you evaluate a player. But let's do it, man. And I am Scott says leader of the Braxton Jones fan club is here. Okay. If that's really what you want to do, let's go. Let's go. But yeah, man, I'm excited. Let's see what we got.
Yeah, so I mean, we might as well just start. I mean, right off the top, the Bears kept both of their second round picks that were near the top of the first round, and everyone's worst nightmare came true. I mean, we tried to. I specifically tried to tell people that if someone on offense wasn't there, they likely weren't going to reach for someone in the second round. It didn't have to be a receiver. And Pickens was there, but he slid quite far. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of good players slid in this draft. Yeah. I mean. Obviously, Nakobe Dean, Malik Willis being the obvious headliner, sliding all the way to the third round after people were saying, "Oh, he's going 7 to the Panthers." Obviously, quite the slide, but receivers went early and they went often in this draft, and people were excited to get their hands on these athletes, and it showed. And so the Bears didn't have anyone slide, didn't have a receiver slide to them, so they ended up taking Kyler Gordon, corner out of Washington, and Jaquan Brisker, who I somehow picked in my run Pro Football Focus when we did our own mock drafts. That was hilarious, a literal laugh out loud moment. But Jaquan Brisker, safety out of Penn State. I mean, we'll start there, Kevin. You get 2 starters right off the bat. I mean, you have positions in need, and I said this when we did our run throughs. 2 obvious glaring needs on this team, and you get 2 starters from day one. A lot of people were surprised that Gordon made it to the second round. A lot of people had first round grades on him. Ryan Poles himself said in all our mocks when he slid to the second round in our simulations, we said just ignore it because there's no way he's going to be there. And there he was. So I'm some hesitation and some questions about whether Gordon can stick as an outside corner or whether he'll be a nickel corner or a slot corner in the duration of his career, but they're going to start him outside opposite Jalen Johnson on day one, and then Brisker obviously plugs in right next to Eddie Jackson from day one.
Look, this is a phenomenal talk about Kyler Gordon. This is a phenomenal pick in the second round. If you've been listening to this show throughout the whole draft process, that's not a name we mentioned. Well, I'll tell you why. I did my due diligence on cornerbacks. I didn't do my due diligence on Kyler Gordon because I didn't think he was going to be available at 39. I simply didn't. I liked what I saw on tape. I said I'm not going to do as much analysis on him and research on him as I will on, say, a Jalen Petrie, who I know is going to be available at 39. I didn't think Kyler Gordon was getting out of the first round, but here he goes. This was one of the deeper cornerback classes, and they get a very, very talented player in Kyler Gordon. Let's talk about him and some of his traits. He's very physical and he's extremely athletic. He had a 9.69 RAS score, which ranked 68th out of 2,000 cornerbacks since like the late 1990s. I don't remember what exact year, but that 9.69 RAS, which is raw athleticism score, or relative athleticism score rather, it's just an insane number. And what's interesting, the reason why he fell at 39, people are wondering, well, why did he fall so far and why was he supposed to be a first runner? Was people saw that athleticism on tape, and it was there throughout the year, throughout his time at Washington. You saw that raw athleticism. And if you watch the tape, you'll see it. At the combine, his numbers were not, he just had a bad day. He ran a 4.5 240. His 3-cone drill and the shuttle weren't as fast as he wanted them to be. Everyone started to get concerned about whether that was really, what his times were. But coaches at Washington, we're getting a lot of comments on our YouTube video breakdown of him that said coaches of Washington were saying he's been running 4.3, 4.4 throughout their process. He just had a bad day at the combine, but that is what allowed him to fall. And honestly, you can say the Bears got a steal. When you watch the tape, he reminds me a lot of Kyle Fuller. The way he gets back to the football, the way he reacts, the way he moves, he's a little bit more athletic and obviously more physical and stronger than Kyle Fuller, but they are very, very similar type players. So when we watched the tape, I was like, that he looks exactly like Kyle Fuller. Obviously, you don't want Kyler Gordon had the same exact career arc as Kyle Fuller because, of course, Kyle Fuller had sort of an interesting career arc with the weird years early on, and then he peaked in 2018 where he's one of the better cornerbacks in the league and then has declined since. I think Kyler Gordon is going to be an impact player from the start, and he's obviously more physical than Kyle Fuller ever was, but he's a really good tackler. He has the ability to make plays in the backfield, tackles for loss, and he has the flexibility to play outside and slot. This is a extremely, extremely good pick, and you're right. When you talk about, why Bears fans are so upset that they didn't take Pickens either at there or at 49 or wherever he was available. Well, you could still make the argument. I think I said on this show, wide receiver is the bigger position of need, but you could argue that cornerback was, and you are getting a instant day one playmaker who is going to be, in my opinion, similar to what Jalen Johnson was for you his first year, which was an extremely effective impact player who made an impact on your defense and was a cornerstone of that defense the moment he stepped on the field. Kyler Gordon will be a Pro Bowler in 2 years, in my opinion. This was a big steal, and I didn't love the pick immediately, but the more I looked into it, the more I did the research and more I watched the tape, I said, holy crap, this guy is really, really good, and I'm glad he's on the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, and I think Poles, one of the first things he said after the draft was, this guy plays faster than he runs, and this was following that 4 or 5 time on the 40-yard dash, and he said he plays faster. You can see it. He plays quicker. His in-game speed is way faster than what he ran. So they really like that. Yeah, I mean, anytime that you can get a day one starter from the jump, anytime you can
right.
And we said this a couple of years ago about Jalen Johnson. Anytime you can have someone who is going to be in there in day one, they know they're the starter. That's huge. And especially at a position of need, we saw what happened last year when you didn't have a reliable guy that you could count on when you were throwing Artie Burns out there, when you were throwing Duke Shelley out there, when you're throwing guys with made up names out there at the end of the year, especially, like, you got exposed, you got burned. Teams were looking forward to playing the Bears defense because you were playing with one corner essentially. And Jalen Johnson you were relying on him for everything, and in a division where you have Aaron Rodgers, that's going to hurt you. And to an extent, Kirk Cousins, we're not a Kirk Cousins show, but even Kirk Cousins, when you only have one corner, really, he's going to hurt you too, especially when he's throwing to a guy like Justin Jefferson. So, I think this is a beneficial pick. Obviously, people are pissed and up in arms that an offensive player wasn't taken with one of these picks and that Justin Fields isn't getting enough help, which, I mean, it kind of looks like it. Yeah, I mean, that Justin Fields isn't. Yeah, that's a fact. But you worked with what you got. Would you have rather reached for a wide receiver who then just flames out in a year? Thomas Graham owns Kirk Cousins. That's facts. So it's for what you got at where you got him, I think Gordon's an incredible value, and he's going to prove that. And now you have 2 corners now.
You want to talk about sort of the differences between the regimes now and what we saw from this draft versus what we saw from Ryan Pace. At pick 39, Ryan Pace probably takes George Pickens there because it's a bigger position of need. And it reminds you, what does it remind me of? The reason why I say that, the merit behind that statement comes from, well, Antoine Winfield, Cole Kmet, 3 years ago. We knew, everyone on the face of the earth knew Antoine Winfield was the better player. And it was no doubt. And we were sitting there clamoring for them to take him. And they took Cole Kmet, and they reached for a position need. They really needed a tight end. They didn't really need Antoine Winfield Jr. at the time. They had just signed Sean Gibson, I think, at that point, and they're like, why do you need another younger guy? And then what does Antoine Winfield do that year? He wins the Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Well, was he fortunate enough to be drafted to a Super Bowl caliber team? Yes, but he was one of the better rookies and one of the best defensive rookies from that class, and is still.
I mean, he was starting on that team. He was a starting Super Bowl safety as a rookie. I know you say exactly. He went to a Super Bowl caliber team, but still, he was good enough to start as a rookie on a Super Bowl caliber team. That's not nothing.
It's not like the Bears definitely drafted for position of need too. It's not like they just drafted for best player available, but they kind of did both. Sure. Like they kind of got lucky where, as we move on to the Jaquan Brisker pick now and break that down, like he was also a steal at 48. And it wasn't, a reach for a position of need, but it is in an area of the team that needs to be improved. Like, you could have, if they didn't draft Jaquan Brisker, you could have said, okay, we have Eddie Jackson and Dane Cruikshank, and we'll be fine, right? We'll be fine. Well, now you have a secondary when you think about, let's say these 5 guys, Eddie Jackson, who we think could return to sort of, a lesser version of his 2018 form, because that 2018 was one of the better safeties in Bears history. Then you have Jalen Johnson, who's improving, Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker, Thomas Graham. What do all these guys have in common? They all have a knack for the football. They're all really good at getting after the ball, forcing pass breakups, forcing takeaways. This is going to be a scary secondary, and people are not going to want to throw on them. And the Jaquan Brisker pick, Jake, you called it, so I'll let you kind of talk about him first. I mean, this is a guy who is extremely physical, has a knack for the football, was making plays in the biggest moments, and I'll get to that. But your evaluation on the Brisker pick, you called it. Everyone praised Jake Hassan. I don't think I got one right. I don't think I got one of my picks right throughout the whole draft. And I predicted a trade down, multiple trade downs, but I didn't get one right. Jake did. Jaquan Brisker is a Chicago Bear, and we should be very happy, shouldn't we?
I think so. I mean, I think he's a really good. I mean, again, kind of back to my point with Kyle Gordon. Like, you get a day one starter. You get someone right away at a position of need. You've been looking for someone to play next to Eddie Jackson for going on 4 years.
Adrian Amos, basically. Like Sean Gibson wasn't,
Right. I mean, but even Clinton Dix was fine.
Right.
And Sean Gibson's been fine, but you've been looking, and that's why kind of the Antoine Winfield pick stings more now in the rear view, because you dream of, okay, Eddie Jackson, Antoine Winfield, they could have been together for the last 3 years now. And you don't. And it sucks, but you've been just kind of cycling through these 1 year deals, these replacements to go next to Eddie Jackson. And now you have that guy. And now you finally have that second younger guy. I mean, Eddie Jackson's, starting to get older, but he's still in the prime of his physical career.
Yes.
But
yes,
I mean, you have Jaquan Brisker, who's there, who is younger, who now you don't have to worry about it theoretically for the next 2 to 3 years, hopefully. And you've been looking for that. And now it's something where you can say, okay, here's our guy. Eddie Jackson, I think it depends. I think Brisker is not going to actively go and make he's not going to be 2018 Eddie Jackson. Like, that's just not going to happen. Like you said, Kevin, that was a historic season for Eddie Jackson, not just in Bears history, but in NFL history. So, it was really, really good. I think Brisker is more like Amos in the way that he's like just safer, more like the floor is higher. You know what you're getting. Now, I think he's better than Amos in the ability to make those big plays in those moments. You alluded to the game against Wisconsin, where a final drive, Wisconsin has the opportunity to win the game at the goal line, and Brisker makes the takeaway, and he seals the game for Penn State, and Penn State goes on to win. So he's better than Amos in that aspect, where he has a better nose for the football and can make those plays more often. But he is like Amos in the way that the floor is very high. He's very safe. You don't have to worry about too often. I mean, he's a rookie. He's going to make some mistakes, and there's going to be some blown coverages at times, but he has that higher floor. Okay, he's just going to consistently do good things.
I totally agree. I mean, this pick to me was unexpected. Again, I thought the Bears were like a lock to get a wide receiver with the first two picks. So after they took cornerback at 39, I was like, this has got to be a wide receiver. Where do you think it was going to be? Calvin Austin or George Pickens, whoever it may be. So I saw Brisker and I was like, shit, but I was like, damn, that name is familiar because of what Jake told me. So then I looked more into it and I was like, you're right, man. I mean, this guy has really good awareness in the football IQ. And I remember watching that Penn State Wisconsin game at my apartment, like live back in the fall. And I remember, I didn't know obviously who Jaquan Brisker was and whether he was a draft prospect at the time, but I remember thinking like, damn, that was a very good play because it was just his awareness of what was going on. I think they broke down the all 22 on the broadcast, and he just like from the jump knew exactly who's the Wisconsin quarterback. Is it Cohn? Jack Cohn?
Jack Cohn, yeah.
Yeah, where Jack Cohn was going with the ball, jumped the route. He used both his physical ability and his athleticism to get there, but it was more his football IQ of just where the ball was going. And again, those are the things you saw from Eddie Jackson in 2018. What made him so good that year? He knew where the ball was going every single play. Is he a very good athlete? Yes, but you think about the Matthew Stafford interception against the Detroit Lions that won them the game on Thanksgiving. You think about the interception against Kirk Cousins on Sunday Night Football. Those were plays where he knew exactly what the offense was doing, where Kirk Cousins was going from the jump. The moment the ball was snapped, he jumped those routes and was getting to a spot. That's exactly what you saw at Jaquan Brisker on that play. And the rest of his tape honestly reflects that. I mean, and the other thing too, similar to Kyle Gordon, like this is another very, very physical player. Like Eddie Jackson is not a physical safety, which is why I think they needed a Jaquan Brisker type player to pair with Eddie Jackson. I mean, this guy is super strong. He's super athletic, but he's physical. He's going to lay the boom. And we've had questions, right, about Eddie Jackson's tackling and really the tackling for the rest of the secondary, which I didn't mention this about Kyler Gordon. He's also a very good tackler. You have now secured two players who can tackle, which was the most frustrating thing for Bears fans last year.
Which has been a problem.
How many times we talk about that, Jake? After a show, we said, "What the hell are we doing? You're not touching guys down on opening, week on the second play of the game. You're not, making an effort for a tackle. You're going after punching the ball, which is great, at times, but you got to be able to make a tackle." This is a guy who can tackle, had 10 tackles for loss in his career, 6 last year, can play in the box, gets after the football in the backfield. I mean, this is to me, another really good pick. And, let's address the fact again, you said Bears fans are mad, right? They go CB, they go safety, they go defensive, both two picks. Well, again, you have to remember what the Bears were bad at this year and what contributed to their losses just as much as their offensive dysfunction contributed. It was their inability to get takeaways and their ability to allow big plays. Those things deterred the Bears from being a successful football team just as much as their flaws on offense. And I will die on that hill, in my opinion, because I mean, every other drive, you're getting broken down for a 50-yard touchdown. Guys can't tackle. And the other thing is you're not helping your offense because you're not getting takeaways and you're not getting the ball back to your offense in favorable field position. So you have now constructed a defense that can help your offense. And through our next pick, we're going to kind of make the argument that you've constructed an offense that can help your defense by staying on the field longer. But the bottom line is, Jake, the reason why these picks make sense and the ideology of them, and you have to understand this as a Bears fan, is they came in with a vision. The Chicago Bears, Matt Eberflus, Ryan Poles came into this approach, into this draft with a vision. They said, we are going to find fast, explosive players who are going to get takeaways. That is the reason Matt Eberflus was hired. And people forget that. He was brought in here to get takeaways and give you what you saw in 2018. And we had this conversation on the draft show, Jake. We said, well, what made 2018 so fun? How good was the 2018 offense, Jake? How good was it? It wasn't that good, was it? It wasn't that great. Aside from the Buccaneers game, the games that you were winning, the most important games of the season you were winning against the Rams, against the Lions, against the Vikings Sunday Football. Those were games where your offense scored under 20 points, but your defense was getting takeaways. That's what made 2018 so fun. That's what's going to make the next 3 years or 4 or 5, hopefully longer years of Bears football fun, is takeaways from players like Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon. That's why they took these guys. They believe that they are going to win football games based off of getting takeaways, and they are right. And I have to say one more thing before we move on. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you've heard me say often, you can win with average defense and exceptional offense. You can't win with average offense and exceptional defense. And it probably sounds right now, based off what I'm saying, that I'm contradicting that. I still think you can win with average defense. Don't get me wrong. But the caveat is, if you're an average defense, you got to be getting after the ball. You got to be getting takeaways, because that's what you might not have the number one, ranked run defense, the number one ranked pass defense. But if you're just like the Colts last year were just like an average defense, but they got a lot of takeaways, and that's why they were successful. Obviously, they weren't an exceptional offense, which is what held them back, but they were statistically an average, which 11th, 12th in league defense, but they got a lot of takeaways. That's what they're trying to build here. Now they have to sort of surround the offensive pieces. I think they have a foundation on defense, and they do have a foundation on offense, and we'll talk about that. You have anything else to say about Brisker, or can we move on to Velus Jones?
Real quick, I do want to say, because you bring up an interesting point that I want to touch on.
Sorry.
You did. That was an all-time rant by you. That was great. But building that foundation, we talked about before this draft and right after the season, who your foundational pieces were. We talked about how on defense, you kind of only had Jalen Johnson and Roquan Smith, whereas on offense, you had Justin Fields, obviously, David Montgomery, probably, running backs, whatever.
Yeah.
Darnell Mooney being another one. And then Larry Borum and Tevin Jenkins. There was a disparity. Well, you hope at least. Guys who are younger, who there's at least potential. And we talked about younger guys who maybe aren't foundational yet, but could be, and that's Jenkins and Borum, obviously. But there was a disparity, because really you only had Roquan Smith and Jalen Johnson, and you think Eddie Jackson. So there was a need for more guys to be added to that, because obviously Khalil Mack is gone. Robert Quinn, he's still on the team for now. We'll see how long that lasts. Along the defensive line, Kyrus Tonga is showing you nice things, but he's a 7th-round pick at the end of the day. Akeem Hicks, gone. Khalil Mack, as I already said, gone. There's guys who have been just cycled through already. So, you add those guys, you add Gordon and you add Brisker, boom, now you're more even. You have that foundation now. Now you go forward. Now, if you hit on a couple of these late round guys, great, awesome, you're looking good. So that's really just thing. The building of the foundation, I think, is good, because it did need to happen a little bit on defense. So especially because Roquan Smith is going to order a lot of money, and we'll see. You hope they pay him, but we'll see what happens. So now you're on a more even playing field as far as the disparity between foundational pieces on offense and defense, and you don't have to worry about that. Still worry about it. You still want guys, but to a lesser degree over the next probably 2 years, 3 years, and possibly longer. So, yeah, that's great. And then let's talk about next when you finally the receiver help you finally did get. Velus Jones Jr. out of Tennessee, your 3rd-round pick. I'm just going to say this off the top. Everyone who is, he's 25, he's so old. Shut up.
What is it?
Shut up. The peak, the production was there at Tennessee. Let's accept that. He's fast, he's physical, the production is there. He's from the SEC. It's not like he's some, D3 school. Yeah, he's 25. Okay, great. Athletes hit their peak at 26, 27, 28 anyway. Realistically, he's a 3rd-round pick. He's not staying past this rookie deal anyway.
Yeah.
In a realistic, you would hope so, but realistically, how long do guys stay in the average career of an NFL player is 3.5, 4 years anyway. So that's fine. Everybody hold on to your hats. Jesus Christ, the sky is not falling. It's fine. You're gonna be fine. You're not. You knew from the jump. You were not going to get a star. You weren't getting a Deebo Samuel. And that's the thing, too. We're throwing out the Deebo Samuel comparisons. Everyone relax. Just take a breath. God, relax. It's not going to be that good, and it's not going to be that bad. It's going to be fine. You're not drafting him to be a number 1. You think Darnell Mooney could take that next step. And he was probably – and he looks like he's someone that Ryan Pace hit on in the 5th round. So what you need is supplemental guys anyway. You need warm bodies at this point. Yeah, okay. He's probably the 4th receiver. It's fine. It's going to be fine. Is it the sexiest pick? Is it when you see John Mechie go ahead of Jaquan Brisker or after Kyler Gordon? Does that look great? No,
I thought
but
that was a reach for
also,
Mechie, honestly.
that's what I'm about to say. People think that Mechie was a reach because of his injuries and because of what happened. So here's the thing we've learned about Bears fans in general. They're gonna find a reason to be mad, and especially when it's that glaring, the age thing, when it's right there in front of your face, they're gonna they're gonna hold on to it like it's a life raft on the Titanic. Like it's gonna be fine. He can still contribute to this team. He can still be someone Justin Fields forms a
Exactly.
connection with. He does a lot of different things, which we know was what made him attractive to Ryan Poles and the front office. He can do a lot of different things. He can line up everywhere. He can line up out of the backfield. Well, let's see what happens. Let's give the guy a chance before. And I can't call him a kid because he's older than me. So let's give the guy a chance before he is as wild. So let's give the dude a chance and let's see how they use him and go from there. Let's not crucify the guy before he even steps on the field for the Bears.
Exactly. I think I saw a tweet that was like, if he's scoring touchdowns and getting you a lot of yards, like that's not going to cross your mind. You're not going to think about that. Like that's literally going to be irrelevant if he's producing. Like you're never going to think about that after draft day.
He scores a touchdown week one. You're not going to say, wait a second. Yeah. This shouldn't be happening.
He's 25. Never mind.
Yeah.
I want to address this comment from Shane because, again, a lot of this conversation about the wide receiver room and this pick, honestly, is based off of your evaluation of the rest of the wide receiver room. And Shane here says Mooney had 1,000 yards in a dumpster fire Matt Nagy Bill Lazor offense. And the more I thought about it, the more I watched his tape and looked at his stats. I don't think people understand how freaking good Darnell Mooney is. Like, you don't have to underestimate him. And I'm trying to find the right word for this, but like, you don't have to undermine his production and his potential because he was a 5th-round pick. I feel like people do that. They say, well, his ceiling can't be that high because he's 5th. No, throw that out the window. That doesn't matter. Those things don't matter at this point of his career. And honestly, they may not matter ever. But Darnell Mooney has the ability to me to be a 1,200, 1,300 yard receiver for this team. He is an extremely good player. And I think they know that. And they have belief in that. And they think that he can make the leap, that he can be a legitimate number 1 this year. So there's people who are like, well, where's the rest of the wide receiver help? If you really think about it, if you get 1,300 yards from Darnell Mooney and say you get 800 from Pringle, which I think is completely possible, you don't need that much else. You don't need that much other help. Like that's insane production. So I want to just kind of preface my conversation about Velus Jones with the fact that I think Darnell Mooney is a legitimate number 1 and will vault himself to. I mean, he was like, I don't know. He was top 10. I think he was top 10 in receiving. Maybe not top 10. He was up there in receiving yards. If someone in the chat look,
and you have to consider this also with the fact that at the end, especially, I mean, the back half of the season, let's say the last 5 games, especially, you knew what was going. Like Allen Robinson was a non-factor.
Right.
The tight ends were a non-factor. Right. You didn't have a real number 3. Like Damiere Byrd was your 3rd receiver. Now,
legend.
I mean, Darnell Mooney did all that with that, including the Matt Nagy factor, including the Bill Lazor factor, including the Justin Fields rookie mistakes factor. So you take all of that, Justin Fields year 2, when you generally expect quarterbacks to make their biggest leap, year 1 to year 2 as far as production and on-field statistics goes. And then you couple that with the fact that, okay, you have a little bit, obviously the Allen Robinson departure hurts considering what he was last year. You have a more, let's call it well-rounded or a fuller wide receiver room, I guess. But you made the mention of Byron Pringle. Like,
baby.
He gets 800 yards. That's I think, isn't that what he had last season? Or did he have 600?
I want to say
somewhere around there.
I want to say it was 6.
It was somewhere around there. But you get that, and then if you get anything out of Cole Kmet, you get anything out of Velus Jones Jr. and Daz Newsome, and then you get I mean, I think we're expecting Equinomia St. Brown to just be so-so. Like, if you can get some of that with, skid around and not everyone's just, okay, Darnell Mooney, let's double team. All right, we're good.
Right.
If you can make that happen, then you're in a decent spot. So I agree with you. I think there is a potential for Darnell Mooney to become that number 1, which would be nice because the Bears haven't hit on a late round receiver like that in a while.
568 for Pringle last year. So, and again, there's been a lot of people who are saying, well, there's untapped potential with Byron Pringle, which I think is true considering what he was to that Kansas City offense. Like he was a number 3-4 guy, and he
Sure.
wasn't on the field every play. He's going to be the number 2. He's going to enter training camp as the number 2 for the Bears, and we'll see how that changes. But let's break down Velus Jones Jr. because I do have a lot to say about this. This pick, when I saw it, it surprised me at first. And don't get me wrong, I was angry. If you guys were watching the show, I don't know if Shane was watching at the time or I am Scox or anyone else was watching, I was kind of pissed because at the time, as crazy as that sounds now, I still wanted Justin Ross. Of course, Justin Ross goes undrafted and after 2 days gets signed.
You were hot about this on Twitter. Hot. You were hot about it all weekend.
I think I tweeted every 10 minutes. I was like, where's Justin Ross? What are we doing here? What's going on? And again,
you would text me. Out of context, just the most angry things, and it made me laugh. So every time, and I always knew, so I would always go to Twitter because I wasn't actively watching the 7th, 6th, 7th round, but it was just
Are you pulling up
it was just God damn it, bro. And I would just go to Twitter and search Justin Ross's name, and it was just
God damn it.
It was just angry. Everything is it just. Please move up, or have him fall, or then just all caps, please, and then down cataclysmically.
That phrase I took from you. Well, and I will say it became harder because as he kept falling, and as the Bears kept acquiring picks, so they ended up having 7 picks on day 3. So after each pick, I'm like, all right, the next one is Justin Ross. The next one is Justin Ross. The next one is Justin Ross. And it just kept not happening. I was like, fuck, what are we doing?
Well, and I was searching his name on Twitter, and people, there were a lot of fans, people
I know
who were tweeting, please get, this is a perfect spot for Justin. Other, I saw Browns fans tweeting it. I saw Patriots fans tweeting it. I saw,
everyone knows.
So,
and the Chiefs get him. Of course, the Chiefs get him.
Yeah, right. And now watch what happens.
Exactly. Watch him be the greatest undrafted free agent pickup of all time.
Well, having Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid helps.
Exactly. That'll help.
that puts you ahead from the jump.
No. Sorry, no, Justin Ross. We gave Velus Jones Jr. Again, this pick surprised me, and I wasn't happy about it, but as I did the research, there were 2 stats that stand out, and there were multiple things on tape, but there were 2 stats that made me understand why the Bears took Velus Jones Jr. Stat number 1, he was graded in the 100th percentile in separation. 100th.
Yep.
100, not 99, not 98, 100. And when you think about, why does that matter? Guys, the offensive line was bad last year, but what people fail to understand sometimes when you evaluate those things in the passing offense, offensive line production can sort of go hand in hand with receiver separation, and that has to do with scheme as well. But think about it, right? If Justin Fields is taking a step, right, and he can't, and no one's getting open, he's going to get sacked. Who does that fall? It falls on the offensive line, but people don't think about the fact that he can't throw the ball because no one's open. The Bears receivers were getting open at one of the lowest rates in the NFL this year. Their separation rates were awful. Allen Robinson could not get open for the life of him. Darnell Mooney was getting open at times, but the offense wasn't scheming him open. The other guys weren't getting open at all. He is 100th percentile in separation. You are bringing in players who are going to get open immediately. Second stat as well. He averaged more yards after contact with 4.02 per reception, and more yards after the catch with 8.32 per reception than all wide receivers drafted ahead of him, except Jameson Williams, who went to the Lions and was the second receiver off the board. And why does that matter? Bears were 30th out of 32 teams in yards after the catch last year. All teams in the top 10 of that category last year made the playoffs. So you wonder if that matters. Yes, it matters. I mean, if you just think, throw away the stats, think about the Bears last year and when you watch them, how many times did you see, aside from the Darnell Mooney 60-yard touchdown against the Ravens, how many times did you see a receiver catch the ball and run for 5 yards after it? Never. You saw the receiver catch the ball.
Any yard.
Receiver catch ball, tackled immediately. Receiver catch ball down. That's not how you help your quarterback. And you think statistically, right? You want to pad Justin's stats. You want the Bears to get their first 4,000-yard receiver. Well, guess what? You can make it a little bit easier on Justin if you get some yards after the catch. Does Patrick Mahomes throw for 400 physical air yards every game? No. He throws screen passes to Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill runs it for 70 yards. But guess what? That's 70 yards on paper for Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is the best receiver or best quarterback in the NFL. I'm not trashing him. I'm just saying you can help your quarterback with stats a little bit. If you get yards after the catch, they get a player who can do that in Velus Jones. Now, Velus Jones has a very limited route tree right now, but the thing is, and we were talking about this on our breakdown that's going to come out tomorrow, you can teach route running. You can teach a more developed route tree. You can't teach speed. You can't teach raw athleticism. I mean, you can improve athleticism. You can't teach raw athleticism, and you can't teach some of the things that Velus Jones Jr. possesses. And I think the Bears saw that, and they said, hey, if we have trust in our coaching staff that we can, improve his route tree, improve his route running, and we know he has the physical attributes, we can turn this guy into a real asset. And that's why they took him, for the reasons of separation, for the reasons of his yards after the catch and yards after contact, which ranked best in the SEC and some of the best in the whole class, and for that raw athletic ability that he has. Obviously ran the 4.31. So for those reasons, it made sense to me. I don't know where you stood when you immediately saw that pick, on your phone or when you were watching, but it started to make sense. Like, am I still thrilled about the pick because of where it happened? Maybe not. But do I understand why they took it? 100%. I do at this point. So hopefully with the right development, he turns into a real asset for the team.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was very fine with the pick. Like, I was very, okay, you took a receiver. It makes sense, considering your need, considering his production. So it makes sense to do all this and do all this. Take this guy here. So, yeah, I mean, let's see what he can be. Like you said, he has these non-teachable attributes. And like I said earlier, it's not like he's coming from, where like some JUCO or something. He's coming from Tennessee. He played SEC competition. So,
Right.
I mean, that says something. I think there is potential here for sure. I think it's good, especially for Justin, to have that type of receiver who can do everything, who can do all, where you can put him anywhere and put him in the backfield and just let him go. So I think that's going to be very beneficial for Justin Fields going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you also have to mention his return ability. That's something that the Bears were looking for after the loss of Tariq Cohen, and Daz Newsome was supposed to be that guy. He didn't really, or I guess he didn't really get a ton of opportunities at it, but I think Velus Jones Jr. will be that guy, regardless of who Daz Newsome is in that area. So, and I will say, he tweeted something after the draft. He said, look, I ran a 4.31, but the thing you have to understand is, you run your fastest in the 40-yard dash when you are running straight. And he posted a video of him running. It was like the view from the end of the 40-yard dash of him running. And you could see him when he runs like he does not run straight. So I think what he was insinuating in that tweet is, hey, I should have ran a high 4.2 if I ran straight. And, sometimes I think sometimes the tape does reflect that. Sometimes I really don't see that raw 4.2 speed, but it is there. Like, he can run that speed, and he has that ability. So you think about now the Bears Bears offense, defending that man. Darnell Mooney, 4.2 speed. Byron Pringle, I think, may have been 4.2 speed, maybe 4.3. Velus Jones Jr., 4.3 speed, potentially be 4.2 speed. Equinemius St. Brown, who I don't think will get a ton of opportunities, 4.3 speed-ish, 4.2 high, 4.2. They have a threat on offense when it comes to the speed. Sure. And they're what are they creating? They're creating the Kansas City Chiefs offense. That's what they're creating. Does the Kansas City Chiefs offense, aside from Travis Kelce, who's a tight end, have big-bodied wide receivers in their past 4 years? I mean, their tallest wide receiver was probably Sammy Watkins, who was like, I don't know, is Sammy even like above 6'2"? I mean, Sammy can't be that tall. And then Josh Gordon came in last year. That guy's a freak of nature, but he never played. They are trying to create the Kansas City offense with speed. And again, why are they doing that? Well, Ryan Poles comes to Kansas City. And now, there's people who say, well, Nagy came from Kansas City and they didn't do that. I don't care, whatever. But I don't want to hear his name anyway. So I like if I had to grade the pick, I'm not going to grade it, but I wouldn't give it an A+. All right. I wouldn't give it an A+. Sure. This is to me like a dynamite pick. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's the steal of the draft. Like, it's not. But in 4 years, could we be saying, wow, the Bears actually got good value in the third round from Velus Jones Jr.? Yeah, I think you could be saying something rational like that. So, yeah. We have about 5 minutes. Do you want to do a little? So, because we can't do every player right now, Jake's got to run back to work. I do want to let's highlight one player each that we like from the rest of the draft, and then maybe next week we'll do the rest of the players. Sure. Does that sound cool? Because there's one name that I want to talk about. So
unsurprisingly, Ryan Poles, after addressing the positions of need, which was, defensive backs and wide receiver, he then just went right for the line. The next 5 picks were all, are not the 5, but 4 of the next 5 were offensive linemen. Offensive lineman and 1 defensive lineman. I mean, credit to Ryan Poles. He kept trading back, getting late round picks, and took shots on a bunch of different guys, a bunch of different offensive linemen and a defensive lineman. So we kind of knew that was going to happen. Ryan Poles was an offensive lineman. He talked about how you got to build in the trenches and then go from there. And I'm not surprised to see him take this approach, especially because you have unknown commodities in Tevin Jenkins and Larry Borum, and you really have a hole at right guard still. So I'm not surprised to see him take this approach. And really, if one of them hits, then you're successful. Then you're good. Then you're great. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you know who I'm going to say just because I'm familiar with his play. Doug Kramer from Illinois. He's a 6-year starter. Yeah. I mean, it makes more sense than me just picking one of the other guys who I know nothing about. Kramer was the center at Illinois, and he was by far their best offensive lineman the last 3 years. He was steady. He was like you could count on him. And,
was he better than Vidarian Lowe? Because Vidarian Lowe got taken ahead of him to the Vikings.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't say he was the best offensive lineman. He was your most steady, the guy that you could count on the most. Mm-hmm. He was a part of the unit from a few years ago that had Alex Palchevsky and guys that ended up going to the line, Kendrick Green. So Kramer, he was the captain of that unit. He was a vocal leader in the locker room as well. I really like it. I hope he can stick. But he can play all around the line. He doesn't have to be a center. I think he could play guard as well. He's reliable. And availability is a talent. I mean, we've seen that in the NFL. Availability is a talent. I think he can be that type of like Alex Bars type player where he might start on the practice squad, but then he comes up and you plug him in as that extra lineman on certain packages, or he starts and when needed. So, yeah, I mean, I like Kramer. I think he could stick. I hope he can stick. Just from watching him too over the last few years, but he's my guy to watch out of all these. Like, because really, I mean, all these guys are late round guys too. You're just throwing darts. I mean, one offensive lineman was in the 5th round. All the other ones were 6th round, 7th round. So they're dart throws. If they stick on the roster, it's better for you. Like, it's successful.
Well, think about, dude, the past 3 years of Bears football, like you've had that has been the most injury-ridden position group on the team.
Right.
And like guys would go down and you'd be like, who the hell are we putting out there? Like now you have actual bodies you can put out there. And that is really, really comforting. And you play the probability game. Like the more you draft, the better odds there are one of them is going to pan out. And you know what that means? I don't know if it'll play. Our guy Mustafa is probably on his way out. We got to get. Oh wow, that is quite wow.
That was loud.
That was quite the Mustafa from YouTube. Mustafa, if you are, there's a lot of new viewers here on YouTube right now. Here we go. There he is, baby. Sam Mustafa. Shane back in the chat. We like to have a little bit of fun with Mustafa, but it probably means he's on his way out. I know Jay's got to head out here, but I really want to highlight real quick Dominic Robinson, who to me and to many people, actually not just for the Bears, was possibly the steal of the entire NFL draft. I mean, this guy, you talk about ceiling versus floor. His ceiling might be the highest of any player in the draft. I mean, this was a player who converted from wide receiver, turned himself into a defensive end, and had good production from that position. But the raw athleticism was there. Now everyone knew that he because he was a wide receiver convert to defensive end. Well, obviously he's not as polished at that position, but his physical attributes, his bend, his flexibility. I mean, when we were doing our breakdown, it was like you didn't see many players better than him at bending under a tackle and getting around just because of the raw athleticism that he has from being a wide receiver. And all the scouting reports on him are the fact that, look, he's played it for, I don't know, I forget how many years he played it, 1 or 2 years. You get him with the right coaching staff, you can turn this guy into an absolute monster because he is an athletic freak. And the comparison that people are making is sort of like a Leonard Floyd from that athleticism aspect, but he's a lot stronger than Leonard Floyd was. We knew that was the limitation with Leonard Floyd all along, was that he was really athletic and he can get to the quarterback through swim moves and through dipping and through flexibility, but he could never power a guy over. He could never power a stronger a tackle on either side. Dominic Robinson has the ability to do that. You give the right coaching staff around him, you can turn him into a good player. And really just holistically for the whole draft, you found a lot of players who are sort of developmental guys, and you are putting a whole lot of faith and trust in your coaching staff to turn these into more polished NFL starters. And I love that. And I have more confidence that this staff can do that, because you had zero confidence in the prior years that they could do that with the staff that they had. I had no trust that they could take a player and develop that player. And we had the historical evidence to prove that. With the new regime, with the new staff, I do have trust that with players like Velus Jones Jr., with more raw players like Dominique Robinson, or even, Braxton Jones, who has some really good run blocking attributes, but, needs a little bit more help in the pass game. And we'll break down some of those guys later. You have the ability to bring these guys in and turn them into good players. Also, Master Teague, undrafted free agent. I had to say him, from Ohio State. Great pick, absolute monster, absolute freak. There was guys better than him at Ohio State this past year. That's why he didn't play. It doesn't mean he's a bad player. He's going to get his chance, and he's going to be paired up back with his old college teammate in Justin Fields. Also one of the most high character men I covered at Ohio State. So love that undrafted free agent pick. But yeah, man, I mean, this class excites you a little bit. They turned 6 picks into 11 total?
Yeah.
Or 10? Like,
yeah,
that 11. That alone is enough for me to say, if we want to put a grade on it, A for Ryan Poles, just because you acquired that many picks. Loved what he did on day 3. So I'm content, Jake.
It was a good awareness by Ryan Poles, knowing that, okay,
Did I say pace? Did I say
no,
pace?
you said Poles.
Okay. I feel like I've done that a few times in the past. Okay, just making sure.
No, I think it was good awareness by him to say, okay, we need bodies in this. Like, we need bodies on this team. Just to be like, all right, we just need guys. And we said that on the show. We said in the past, like, you just need warm bodies in some of these rooms. Receiver, offensive line were ones that we highlighted. So credit to him for knowing that and kind of being a way to say, all right, yeah, this is what we're working with. Need more young guys. So credit to him for that. Yeah, I think it was fine. I'm not going to give grades. I'm not going to pass judgment, because we'll see what happens. I think from what we know, you got 3 starters with your top 3 picks. I think that's commendable in and of itself. So agreed. I'm happy with that. And 2 of them, the first 2 picks, I think are going to be high-level starters, have the potential to be at least. So I think that's great. But yeah, I mean, this has been a intriguing start to the Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus regime. So we'll say it that way, an intriguing start. But this has been Bears Nation Podcast. Shout out to everyone for coming through for the afternoon episode. Well, we're not usually doing afternoons, but hey, it works out. You guys come through, so we appreciate you. So thank you for watching. For the people listening, we appreciate you just as much. You guys consume it after the recording. We appreciate you just as much. You guys are the best viewers, listeners. Kevin, you're also the best. Appreciate you. Again, great job on the draft coverage. You crushed it, man. But we'll be back next week. We'll break down a couple more of these guys a little bit more in depth. And, maybe there'll be some signings that we can break down, because, man, do you still need people. So until next time, everyone, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And as always, bear down.
Bear down.
Bye.